Between 1837 and 1901, everyday Victorians had to navigate over 500 rules about how to act around each other. We're talking serious consequences if you messed up. Wrong fork? Social disaster. Took your gloves off at the wrong time? People would talk. Greeted someone the wrong way? You might not get invited back. Now, I know what you're thinking. That sounds exhausting. And yeah, it was a lot. But here's the thing nobody really talks about. For the Victorians, all these rules actually made life easier. When everyone knows exactly what to do, there's less awkward guessing, less anxiety about messing up. Tonight, I want to show you what it was really like living with these strange, specific rules controlling your every move. Before we get into it though, real quick, I'm curious. Where are you right now? Like actually where? Drop your city in the comments. I love seeing people tune in from all over. Last week someone said they were listening from a train in Norway at midnight and I was like, that's perfect. Anyway, Victorian England. But first, and I mean this, pause for a second. Are you actually comfortable? Adjust your pillow, grab your blanket, whatever you need. This one's a longer story, so you'll want to be settled in. Your eyes crack open to darkness. The fire in your bedroom grate died hours ago, and the February chill has crept into every corner of the room. The sheets beneath you are cold except for your own body's imprint, and your breath forms little clouds above your face. Unlike your cozy modern bed with its memory foam and temperature control, you're lying on a lumpy horsehair mattress that crinkles when you move. And those aren't just shadows on your ceiling, that's the elaborate carved mahogany canopy of your four-poster bed, designed not for aesthetics, but to hold heavy curtains that keep drafts at bay in this perpetually freezing house. You shift slightly, and your nightgown, a full-length, high-necked affair that covers nearly every inch of your body, twists uncomfortably. This isn't some sexy little Victoria's Secret number. This is a serious garment designed for serious sleeping. It's 1876, and even your sleepwear follows strict rules of modesty. There's a gentle knock at your bedroom door. "Ma'am?" comes the soft voice of your lady's maid, Martha. "You may enter," you reply, your voice still groggy with sleep. And here's where the etiquette ballet begins, right from the first moment of consciousness. Because in Victorian England, there isn't a single moment of your day that isn't governed by elaborate, often baffling rules. "Good morning, ma'am," Martha says as she enters, already dressed and put together despite the ungodly hour. "It's 6:30. 6:30? Wait. Hold up, unlike your comfy bed where you might lazily scroll through your phone until 9 a.m, Victorian ladies of quality were expected to rise early. Not as early as servants, mind you. They've been up since 5 a.m, but early enough to make you question your life choices. Martha bustles over to the window and pulls back the heavy curtains. Not that it does much good. The winter sun won't actually rise for another hour. She lights the lamps and then kneels at the fireplace, stoking last night's embers and adding new coal. "The master is already in his dressing room, ma'am," she informs you. Translation: your husband has begun his morning routine and you're falling behind. "Would you prefer tea before dressing, ma'am?" Martha asks. Here's your first etiquette decision of the day. According to the etiquette manuals that govern every aspect of proper Victorian life, a lady should refresh herself with a light cup of tea before beginning her toilette. But there are at least 15 more elaborate steps to get through before breakfast, so maybe you should just get started. Yes, tea please, you decide, because if you're going to suffer through Victorian morning rituals, you might as well have caffeine. Martha nods and pours you a cup from the tray she brought up with her. Notice that? She didn't ask if you wanted tea and then go get it. She already had it ready. Your entire day has been predetermined by etiquette manuals that dictate exactly what you should be doing at every moment. You take a sip and then swing your legs over the side of the bed. No lounging about. That would indicate sloth, one of the worst traits a Victorian lady could display. "Shall I prepare your washing water, ma'am?" Martha asks. "Look at your bedside. See anything missing, like maybe a bathroom?" Yeah, about that. In most Victorian homes, even wealthy ones, indoor plumbing is still a luxury. You won't be starting your day with a hot shower. "Yes, please," you say, watching as Martha pours water from a pitcher into a porcelain basin on your washstand. The water is lukewarm at best. Martha adds a few drops of rose water to it, not just for the pleasant smell, but because Victorian hygiene wisdom says flower waters have cleansing properties. I can see you scrunching your nose. But isn't she going to heat it up, you ask? Nope. One historian found a quote from the era that said, "Too much washing is a mistake and opens the pores to cold." This wasn't universal. Some Victorians were obsessed with cleanliness, but many believed that excessive bathing was unhealthy, especially in cold water. "Here you are, ma'am," Martha says, placing a washcloth beside the basin. And now for the most elaborate face-washing routine known to mankind. According to Victorian beauty manuals, you're supposed to 1. Wash with cold water to tone the skin. 2. Pat dry, never rub, that causes wrinkles. 3. Apply cold cream. 4. Remove cold cream with a clean cloth. 5. Apply rose water tonic. 6. Pat dry again, all this before you've even brushed your teeth. And speaking of which, where's the toothpaste? The toothbrush? Martha hands you a small ceramic pot and a horsehair brush. Inside the pot is a paste made of chalk, soap, and myrrh. It tastes exactly as terrible as it sounds. "Would you like me to prepare your undergarments while you finish, ma'am?" Martha asks. You nod, mouth full of chalk paste, and Martha moves to your wardrobe. This is where things get really wild, because the list of items you have to wear just to be considered dressed in Victorian England is longer than a CVS receipt. Let's count together, shall we? First, there's the chemise, a knee-length sleeveless undergarment made of cotton or linen. Then comes the drawers, split-leg underwear that reaches to your knees. Over that goes the corset, a heavily boned torture device that will reduce your waist by several inches and make breathing optional. You'll need help with that one. "I've laid out the blue morning dress, ma'am," Martha says, with the white lace collar. Hold up. The blue morning dress? Yes, because in Victorian England you don't just have different outfits for different occasions, you have entirely different categories of clothing for different times of day. The morning dress is relatively simple compared to what you'll wear later, but it's still a far cry from throwing on yoga pants. "Thank you, Martha," you say, rinsing your mouth. "I'm ready for my corset." And here comes the most infamous part of Victorian dressing. Martha wraps the corset around your midsection, positioning it carefully. The front has a metal busk with hooks and eyes which she fastens first. Then she moves behind you to begin tightening the laces. "How tight would you like it today, ma'am?" she asks. This is another one of those etiquette decisions that seems insane to modern sensibilities. Tight lacing, the practice of cinching a corset to create an extremely small waist, was controversial even in Victorian times. Medical journals warned about its dangers, but fashion often won out over comfort. Just comfortable enough for morning wear, you decide. No need to torture yourself before breakfast. Martha begins pulling the laces, starting from the top and bottom and working toward the middle. Each tug compresses your ribcage a little more. It's not painful exactly, but you definitely can't take a deep breath. "Is that suitable, ma'am?" she asks when she's finished. "You test your range of motion. You can breathe, albeit shallowly, and you can raise your arms. That'll do." "Yes, thank you," you say. Now comes the petticoat, a full skirt worn under your dress to give it shape, then the crinoline or bustle depending on the current fashion. The crinoline is a cage-like structure that makes your skirt bell outward in all directions, while the bustle creates a pronounced curve only in the back. The bustle, I think, you decide, because at least with a bustle you can sit down without your skirt flying up to your face. After the structural elements come the stockings, garters and boots. Your boots have dozens of tiny buttons, each of which must be fastened with a button hook. No zippers, no Velcro, just tiny buttons that take forever to do up. "Would you like your hair dressed now, ma'am, or after breakfast?" Martha asks. Another etiquette dilemma. If you have your hair done now, you'll look proper for breakfast with your husband. If you wait until after, you'll have more time for the elaborate styling expected for receiving morning callers. But what would the etiquette manuals say? Ladies should present themselves at the breakfast table in a neat and tidy manner, with hair arranged simply but elegantly, as one 1876 guide puts it. So, hair first it is. "Now, please," you say, sitting at your dressing table. Martha begins by brushing your hair, long methodical strokes, at least 100 of them. Victorian hair care was serious business. Women rarely washed their hair, maybe once a month with egg yolks or borax, but they brushed it religiously to distribute the natural oils. For morning wear, your hair will be arranged relatively simply, perhaps twisted into a chignon at the nape of your neck with a few curls framing your face. Later, for afternoon calls or evening events, it will become much more elaborate. "There we are, ma'am," Martha says when she's finished. "Would you like rouge today?" Makeup is another tricky area of Victorian etiquette. Obvious makeup was considered vulgar and associated with actresses or women of questionable virtue, but a perfectly pale complexion with naturally rosy cheeks and lips was the ideal. Since this doesn't occur in nature for most people, many women secretly used cosmetics while pretending they didn't. Just a touch, you say, very subtle. Martha takes a small pot from your dressing table drawer and applies the tiniest bit of rouge to your cheeks with her fingertip. Then she offers you a jar of lip salve tinted slightly red with carmine dye. You dab it on yourself, careful to make it look as natural as possible. The morning dress comes next, a high-necked, long-sleeved gown in a muted blue. It's relatively plain compared to afternoon or evening wear, but still has an elaborate system of hooks and eyes up the back that require Martha's help. "There we are, ma'am," she says once you're fully dressed. "Will you be going down for breakfast?" This seemingly simple question is loaded with social implications. In some households, ladies take breakfast in their rooms. In others, the family gathers together. It depends partly on personal preference and partly on what's fashionable among your social circle. "Yes, I'll go down," you decide. "Is Lady Caroline joining us?" Lady Caroline is your mother-in-law who lives with you and your husband. Her presence at breakfast would change the entire dynamic, requiring more formal behaviour. "No, ma'am, her ladyship is taking breakfast in her room this morning," Martha replies. "Thank goodness for small mercies. At least you won't have to navigate the complex etiquette of dealing with your mother-in-law before you're properly caffeinated." "Very well, that will be all for now, Martha. I'll ring if I need anything else." Martha curtsies slightly and withdraws, leaving you fully dressed and prepared to face the day. It's now approximately 7:30 a.m, and all you've accomplished is basic hygiene and getting dressed, and it required the help of another human being. You check yourself in the mirror one last time. Every hair is in place, your posture is perfect, partly due to the corset which makes slouching physically impossible, and your expression is pleasantly neutral. Time to go downstairs and see your husband. The hallway outside your bedroom is chilly. Large houses are notoriously difficult to heat, and even with fireplaces in every room, the corridors remain cold. You make your way carefully down the grand staircase, one hand lightly touching the banister. Even the way you walk is governed by etiquette. A proper lady moves gracefully, taking small steps, never rushing or thumping about. When you reach the dining room, your husband is already seated at the head of the table, newspaper in hand. He looks up as you enter. "Good morning, my dear," he says, rising from his chair. This is proper etiquette. A gentleman always stands when a lady enters the room. He remains standing until you're seated. "Good morning, Harold," you reply with a small smile. You don't kiss. Public displays of affection, even between husband and wife, are considered highly improper. Instead, Harold pulls out your chair at the other end of the long table, waits for you to be seated, then returns to his place. The butler, Thompson, materializes beside you with a pot of coffee. "Coffee, madam?" he asks. "Yes, thank you, Thompson," you reply. He pours with precision, then steps back to his position against the wall. He'll remain there, silent and watchful throughout the meal, anticipating your needs before you voice them. This is good service in Victorian terms, invisible until required, then instantly available. The breakfast table is laden with far more food than two people could possibly eat. Eggs, kidneys, bacon, sausages, fish, toast, muffins, and more. This display of abundance is partly practical. The food will stay warm longer in the covered silver dishes, and partly a status symbol. "Are there any letters this morning?" you ask as you delicately serve yourself some scrambled eggs. "Several," Harold replies. "Thompson, please bring the mail tray." The butler brings a silver tray with the morning's correspondence, neatly arranged. Harold takes the letters addressed to him, leaving yours on the tray. He begins opening them immediately. You, however, must wait. A lady doesn't open her correspondence at the breakfast table unless given permission by her husband. "You may read your letters if you wish, my dear," Harold says, noticing your glance at the tray. "Thank you," you reply, picking up the first envelope. The letter is from your sister in London, describing her latest social engagements. As you read, you must remember not to show too much emotion, no laughing out loud or expressions of surprise. Composure is essential to proper breeding. You and Harold eat in relative silence, occasionally commenting on your correspondence or the day's plans. Extended conversation at breakfast is not expected. Mornings are for organising one's day, not for discussion. When you've finished eating, you place your knife and fork together on your plate. This signals to Thompson that he may clear your setting. "I shall be at my club this afternoon," Harold informs you. "Will you be receiving visitors today?" "Yes," you say. "It's Tuesday, so I'll be at home to callers." This is another piece of Victorian social machinery. Each lady in society has a specific day when she's at home to receive visitors. Your friends know that on Tuesdays between 3 and 5 p.m, they may call on you and expect to be received. "Very good," Harold says, folding his newspaper. "I have some business to attend to in my study before I leave. Will you excuse me?" "Of course," you reply. Harold stands, bows slightly, and exits the dining room. You remain at the table a moment longer, finishing your coffee. The day stretches before you, a carefully choreographed series of activities and social obligations, each with its own set of rules. After breakfast, you'll meet with the housekeeper to plan meals and discuss household matters. Then you'll write some letters and perhaps practice the piano for an hour. Luncheon will be a light, solitary affair, after which you'll change into your afternoon dress to receive visitors. If there's time before dinner, you might take a short walk, weather permitting, with your lady's maid as chaperone. The evening will bring another change of clothing and perhaps a dinner party or an evening at the theatre. Every moment, from waking until sleeping, is governed by rules of behaviour so intricate and numerous that entire books are written to explain them, and that's just for a regular day at home. Special occasions like dinners, balls, or travel have their own elaborate codes of conduct. You sigh softly, place your napkin beside your plate, and stand. Time to begin another day of navigating Victorian society's invisible maze of etiquette. Thompson appears instantly. "Will there be anything else, madam?" "No, thank you, Thompson. Please inform Mrs. Wilson I'll meet with her in the morning room in half an hour." "Very good, madam." As you leave the dining room, you mentally review your wardrobe. You'll need your afternoon dress ready for receiving visitors, and you should decide which evening dress to wear in case you're invited out. Each activity requires its specific uniform, and getting it wrong would be a social disaster. You pause at the foot of the stairs, straightening your posture before ascending. Even when no one is watching, a lady maintains her deportment, because in Victorian England, etiquette isn't just what you do, it's who you are. Your lady's maid will be waiting to help you change your dress after your meeting with the housekeeper. The morning dress you're wearing now, while perfectly appropriate for breakfast with your husband, would be considered too casual for receiving guests in the afternoon. And so the dance continues, step by precise step through every hour of the day, because that's life in Victorian England, a never-ending performance where the rules are written in invisible ink and one wrong move could spell social disaster. The morning has just begun, but already you've navigated dozens of potential etiquette pitfalls, and there are many more to come as the day unfolds. But that's a story for another hour of our journey through Victorian life. After meeting with Mrs. Wilson, your housekeeper, you retreat to your private sitting room. It's nearly noon, and you've scheduled a shopping trip to select new ribbons for your evening gown. This means venturing into public, a battlefield of potential social missteps that requires serious preparation. "Martha," you call, ringing the small silver bell on your desk. "I'll be going out after luncheon." Your lady's maid appears promptly. "Yes, ma'am. Will you be walking or taking the carriage?" Another decision loaded with social implications. Walking displays your willingness to be seen and grants you the opportunity to acknowledge acquaintances, but it also exposes you to the elements, dirt, and potential impropriety. Taking the carriage shows status, but might seem pretentious for a simple shopping trip. "I believe I'll walk. The weather seems fair enough," you decide, glancing at the weak winter sunlight streaming through the window. "I'll need my walking dress, hat, and gloves." Martha nods. "The navy walking dress with the matching pelisse, ma'am." "Yes, that will do nicely." Walking dresses are specifically designed for public promenades, practical enough for movement, but stylish enough to display your status. Yours has a slightly shorter hemline than your indoor dresses, still well below your ankles, of course, but raised just enough to avoid dragging in the street dirt. While Martha fetches your walking outfit, you mentally prepare for the complex dance of public etiquette that awaits. The streets of London in 1876 are a social minefield where one wrong move could damage your reputation. After a light luncheon, Martha helps you change into your walking ensemble. First comes the walking dress, navy blue wool with subtle trim, high-necked and long-sleeved, of course. Over this goes the pelisse, a fitted coat that matches the dress. Then boots, sturdy but elegant, with a modest heel. "Your gloves, ma'am," Martha says, holding out a pair of fine kid leather gloves. These aren't just accessories, they're social armour. A proper lady never, ever goes out with bare hands. Gloves protect you from both physical dirt and metaphorical social contamination. They create a literal barrier between you and the common world. "Which hat would you prefer today, ma'am?" Martha asks, presenting two options. You select a modest bonnet trimmed with navy ribbon and a small cluster of artificial flowers. Too elaborate would seem showy for a simple shopping expedition. Too plain would suggest carelessness about your appearance. Martha ties the ribbons under your chin and steps back to assess the overall effect. "Very suitable, ma'am. Will you be taking a parasol?" "Yes, I think I shall." Even weak winter sunlight poses a threat to a lady's complexion. Pale skin is a mark of gentility, showing you don't labour outdoors like the working classes. Martha hands you your parasol, gloves, and a small reticule, a drawstring bag just large enough for a handkerchief, a few coins, and perhaps a calling card or two. No bulky handbags in Victorian England. A lady travels light, as her needs should be minimal in public. "Will you require an escort, ma'am?" Martha asks. Another critical decision. Respectable ladies, especially younger ones, don't walk alone on public streets, but you're a married woman of 26, not some debutante, and you're only going a few streets over to the shops. Still, etiquette books are clear on this point. "Yes, you'll accompany me, Martha," you decide. Not only is it proper, but your maid can carry any purchases, saving you from the indignity of appearing burdened in public. As you descend the stairs, your husband emerges from his study. "Ah, my dear, are you going out?" he asks, noting your walking attire. "Yes, to the haberdashery on Bond Street. I need ribbons for my blue silk gown." "Very good. Be sure to take Martha with you," he says. "And perhaps you might see if Blackwood's has the latest Fraser's magazine. I've been waiting for this month's issue." "Of course," you reply with a small smile. Harold nods, satisfied. A husband's permission for such outings isn't strictly necessary, but his approval is still important. Victorian marriages may be partnerships, but they're not equal ones. Thompson appears with your outer things, a fur-trimmed cloak to go over your pelisse in the winter chill, and a small muff for additional warmth. Once suitably bundled, you're finally ready to brave the public sphere. "We shall return by 4 o'clock, you inform Thompson. This timing is deliberate. It allows you to complete your shopping and return home before dusk. Respectable women are rarely seen on the streets after dark. The front door opens and you step out into the crisp winter air of London. Martha follows a few paces behind, close enough to assist if needed, but not so close as to seem like an equal. The moment your foot touches the public pavement, you transform. Your posture, already impeccable thanks to your corset, becomes almost regal. Your expression shifts to one of pleasant neutrality, not smiling, which could be misinterpreted as seeking attention, but not severe either. This is your public face, carefully cultivated to reveal nothing while observing everything. Keep your eyes modestly downcast, Victorian etiquette manuals advise, but still sufficiently raised to observe all that passes around you. It's a delicate balance, seeming demure while remaining vigilant. You set off at a measured pace, not too slow, which suggests idleness, nor too quick, which appears undignified. Your hands, encased in gloves, hold your parasol delicately. The very way you walk is a performance, each step demonstrating your breeding and refinement. As you turn onto a busier street, the real test begins. Other pedestrians are everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen of varying social ranks, shopkeepers, servants, street vendors. Each requires a different response according to the elaborate hierarchy of Victorian society. A gentleman approaches from the opposite direction. You don't know him, so you keep your eyes forward, acknowledging neither his existence nor his appreciative glance. An unknown man doesn't exist to a respectable woman unless properly introduced. The lady is a fortress, one etiquette book proclaims, impenetrable to casual acquaintance and immune to improper advance. Next comes a lady you recognize vaguely from church services, Mrs. Henderson, if you recall correctly. She's of similar social standing, so a slight nod of acknowledgement is appropriate. She returns the gesture, and you both continue on your way. No words are exchanged. You haven't been formally introduced, merely recognize each other from shared social spaces. "Oh my goodness," Martha murmurs from behind you. "Mind the puddle, ma'am." You navigate around a dirty puddle in the street, carefully lifting your skirts with your right hand, just enough to clear the hem from danger, no more. To raise your skirts with both hands would be considered vulgar, revealing too much ankle and suggesting a lack of modesty. Across the street you spot Lady Harrington, a prominent society matron who has entertained you and Harold at her home. This warrants more recognition. You incline your head more noticeably and offer a small smile. She acknowledges you with a similar gesture before continuing her conversation with her companion. A delivery boy rushes past, nearly colliding with you. He tips his cap hurriedly in apology but doesn't speak. Crossing classes through conversation would create uncomfortable social friction for both of you. As you approach a busy intersection, a true test of street etiquette presents itself. A gentleman you know quite well, Mr. Fairfield, one of Harold's colleagues, is walking toward you. Upon seeing you, he immediately removes his hat with his hand farthest from you, the left one in this case, executing a small but proper bow. "Mrs. Blackwood, good afternoon," he says politely. "Mr. Fairfield, how do you do?" you reply, stopping briefly. He replaces his hat promptly after the greeting. Leaving it off too long would appear obsequious, while failing to remove it at all would be deeply disrespectful. "I trust Harold is well?" he inquires. "Quite well, thank you. He mentioned seeing you at the club yesterday." "Indeed. Please convey my regards to him." "I shall. Good day, Mr. Fairfield." "Good day, Mrs. Blackwood." The entire exchange takes perhaps 30 seconds, but it follows precise choreography. Mr. Fairfield initiated the conversation, as a gentleman must when encountering a lady of his acquaintance, kept the interaction appropriately brief, and didn't delay you unnecessarily. You maintained proper eye contact without being overly familiar, and the topics remained suitably impersonal. Had Mr. Fairfield been accompanied by his wife, further complications would have ensued. You would have acknowledged her first, regardless of your connection to her husband. The gentlemen would have tipped their hats, but allowed the ladies to determine the length and tone of the encounter. Everyone said Victorian women were oppressed, you might be thinking. But it seems like they had a lot of social power. Well, yes and no. Women controlled much of the social realm, but that power existed within rigid boundaries established by men. The rules themselves might seem to favour female authority in certain interactions, but the overall system still placed women in a dependent position. You continue your walk toward Bond Street, navigating more social encounters along the way. When a carriage splashes through a puddle nearby, a working-class man instinctively steps between you and the spray, protecting your dress at the expense of his own clothing. You don't thank him directly, that would require conversation with a stranger, but you incline your head slightly in acknowledgement of his courtesy. The street grows more crowded as you approach the shopping district. Here, a new set of rules applies. In the crush of bodies, you must maintain your personal space without appearing rude or defensive. Your parasol serves as a subtle boundary marker, keeping others at an appropriate distance. "Excuse me, ma'am." A rough-looking man has approached too close, violating the invisible bubble of propriety around you. Martha immediately steps forward, placing herself between you and the stranger. "Sir, Please keep your distance, she says firmly. The man scowls but moves away. This is why escorts are necessary. They provide a buffer between ladies and the unwashed masses, handling uncomfortable situations so you don't have to soil your hands, metaphorically, with confrontation. You arrive at the haberdashery, a small but elegant shop catering to ladies of quality. As you enter, the bell above the door announces your arrival, and the shopkeeper looks up from his ledger. "Mrs. Blackwood, good afternoon," he says with a respectful bow. He knows you by name. You're a regular customer, and shopkeepers make it their business to remember their better clientele. "Good afternoon, Mr. Davis," you reply. "I'm looking for ribbon to trim an evening gown, something in a pale blue silk, perhaps with a subtle pattern." "Of course, ma'am, I have several options that might suit." He gestures to a stool by the counter. "Would you care to be seated while I bring them for your inspection?" You take the offered seat, maintaining perfect posture despite your fatigue from the walk. Shopping etiquette is its own specialized realm, with expectations for both customer and merchant. As a lady of quality, you're entitled to personal service and comfortable accommodations, but you're also expected to behave with courtesy toward the shopkeeper. Mr. Davis brings out several spools of ribbon, displaying them on the counter for your examination. "This one was imported from Paris just last month," he says, indicating a particularly fine example. "The pattern is quite new." You examine the ribbons carefully, touching them only with your gloved fingertips. Even through the leather, you can feel the quality of the silk. "The French blue with the silver thread, I think," you decide. 3 yards should be sufficient. "An excellent choice, ma'am." While Mr. Davis measures and cuts the ribbon, you maintain a dignified silence. Chattering or haggling would be beneath your station. Quality goods command quality prices, and a lady never appears concerned with something as vulgar as cost. "Will there be anything else today, ma'am?" he asks, as he wraps your purchase in tissue paper. "Yes, I'd like to see your new laces as well. I need something suitable for a morning cap." Another selection process ensues, ending with the purchase of 2 yards of delicate white lace. Mr. Davis wraps this carefully as well, then hands both packages to Martha, who tucks them into the small basket she carries for this purpose. "Please charge these to Mr. Blackwood's account," you instruct. "Of course, ma'am. Thank you for your patronage." You exit the shop with the same dignity with which you entered, parasol redeployed against the afternoon sun. Your next stop is the bookseller's to fulfill Harold's request for the magazine. As you walk, you notice a commotion up ahead. A street vendor's cart has overturned, scattering oranges across the pavement. A small crowd has gathered, some helping to collect the fruit, others simply gawking at the spectacle. This presents an etiquette dilemma. The proper course for a lady encountering a street disturbance is to avoid it entirely, crossing to the other side if necessary, but to do so might mean walking through mud or navigating around a delivery wagon. The other option is to proceed with dignified indifference, neither slowing to stare nor hurrying past as if frightened. You choose the latter approach, maintaining your measured pace as you pass the scene, your eyes fixed ahead as if the chaos doesn't exist. This is the essence of public etiquette for a Victorian lady, moving through the world while appearing untouched by its baser elements. At the bookseller's, you're greeted with the same deference as at the haberdashery. Harold's magazine is procured, paid for on account, and added to Martha's basket. Your shopping complete, you begin the journey home. The afternoon has advanced and the streets are even busier now. Workers are beginning to emerge from offices and shops, filling the pavements with a less refined class of pedestrian. You quicken your pace slightly, eager to return to the sanctuary of your home before the true rush begins. As you turn onto your street, you encounter Lady Caroline, your mother-in-law, returning from her own afternoon calls, accompanied by her companion, Miss Winters. "Ah, Elizabeth, Lady Caroline says, using your Christian name as is her privilege as your husband's mother. I see you've been shopping. Yes, Lady Caroline, you reply with appropriate deference. Just some ribbons and lace, and a magazine for Harold. Her gaze is evaluative, assessing your appearance for any fault she might criticize later. Well, you'd best get inside. The air is growing chill, and you're looking rather flushed from your exertions. This is as close to concern as Lady Caroline ever comes. You accept it with a gracious nod. Yes, I was just returning. Will you be joining us for dinner this evening? I shall. I've invited Canon Pembroke as well. Such an edifying conversationalist. 6:30 as usual. Of course. I'll inform Cook to set an extra place. With a regal nod, Lady Caroline continues toward the house, Miss Winters trailing behind her like a dutiful shadow. You follow at a respectful distance, maintaining the hierarchical space between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law that etiquette demands. Thompson opens the door as you approach, having spotted you from the window. You step into the entrance hall with a sigh of relief. Public performance complete, you can now relax into the slightly less rigid etiquette of your own home. Your cloak, ma'am, Thompson says, helping you remove your outer garments. Thank you, Thompson. Lady Caroline has invited Canon Pembroke to dinner this evening. Please inform Cook. Very good, ma'am. Martha takes your hat, gloves and parasol, handling them with the care such expensive items deserve. Your gloves will need cleaning. Even the brief contact with shop goods has left them slightly soiled. I'll prepare your afternoon dress, ma'am, Martha says. The green silk with the lace collar? Yes, that will do nicely. You ascend the stairs, mentally reviewing your afternoon's expedition. By Victorian standards, it was entirely successful. You accomplished your errands without a single breach of etiquette, navigated various social encounters appropriately, and returned home with your dignity and wardrobe intact. But the day's etiquette challenges are far from over. Dinner with Lady Caroline and Canon Pembroke presents an entirely new set of protocols to navigate. Formal dinner service, proper conversation topics, and the delicate balance of deference to your mother-in-law while maintaining your authority as the lady of the house. As Martha helps you change into your afternoon dress, you mentally prepare for the next social performance. The public streets may be a battlefield of etiquette, but the Victorian dining table is where reputations are truly made and broken. You sit at your dressing table as Martha arranges your hair, adding a few more pins to secure the style that had loosened slightly during your walk. The face in the mirror shows no sign of the mental calculations constantly running behind your composed expression. The endless, exhausting work of being a proper Victorian lady. But that's a story for another hour of our journey through the bizarre world of Victorian etiquette. After changing into your afternoon dress, the green silk with delicate lace trim at the collar and cuffs, you check the small ormolu clock on your mantelpiece. Just past 3 o'clock. Perfect timing. Martha, are the drawing room fires lit? You ask as your maid secures the final hairpin. Yes, ma'am. Thompson had them lit an hour ago. The room is quite warm now. And tea will be served at 4? Cook has been informed, ma'am. Everything is prepared. Today is Tuesday, you're at home day. Between 3 and 5 o'clock, ladies of your acquaintance know they may call upon you and expect to be received. This system prevents the social chaos that would ensue if people simply dropped by whenever they pleased. Every lady in your circle has her designated day carefully tracked in your leather-bound visiting book. You make your way downstairs to ensure the drawing room is properly prepared for visitors. The room must be immaculate but not ostentatious, comfortable but formal enough to maintain proper decorum. The drawing room is the heart of Victorian social life, a feminine domain, where women conduct the delicate business of maintaining social connections. The space itself reflects this purpose, with elegant but sturdy furniture arranged to facilitate conversation while preserving proper distance between guests. You adjust a cushion, straighten a figurine, and ensure the current issues of acceptable magazines Godey's Ladies' Book, Peterson's Magazine, and the Queen are artfully arranged on a side table. These small touches matter enormously in the theatre of Victorian social calls. Thompson appears at the drawing room door. "Excuse me, ma'am, there are cards." The first move in the elaborate game of social calling has begun. Thompson presents a small silver tray bearing 2 visiting cards. You examine them carefully. The first card reads Mrs. Edward Pemberton in elegant script with the address 42 Grosvenor Square printed beneath. The second, slightly smaller card reads Miss Harriet Pemberton, Mrs. Pemberton's unmarried daughter. Several crucial pieces of information are conveyed through these simple rectangles of cardstock. The fact that Mrs. Pemberton has included her daughter's card indicates this is a formal call. Had the corner of the card been turned down, it would have signified the call was made in person rather than by a servant. The absence of PPC, pour prendre congéto, take leave, tells you this is not a farewell call before travel. "Are the ladies waiting, Thompson?" you ask. "Yes, madam, in the carriage." Now comes your response in this silent conversation. You have several options, each with distinct social implications. You could send your own card back to the carriage, indicating you are not at home, the polite fiction used when declining visitors. This wouldn't necessarily mean you're actually away, just unavailable, perhaps due to illness, prior engagements, or simply not wishing to see these particular callers. The Pembertons would understand this as a gentle rejection of their visit today, but not a permanent social cut. Alternatively, you could invite them in, officially receiving their call and thereby acknowledging your social connection. Once admitted, strict time limits apply, 15 to 30 minutes for a standard call, with careful attention to not overstay one's welcome. The Pembertons are good acquaintances, if not intimate friends. Mrs. Pemberton's husband is a colleague of Harold's, and her daughter Harriet is of marriageable age-making connections with established matrons like yourself is important for her social advancement. "Please inform the ladies that I am at home and would be delighted to receive them," you tell Thompson. "Very good, ma'am." Thompson withdraws to convey your acceptance, and you take a seat in your designated chair positioned to catch the best light while allowing you to observe the entire room. Posture is crucial. You sit straight, ankles crossed and tucked slightly to one side, hands folded in your lap. Minutes later, Thompson returns to announce Mrs. Edward Pemberton and Miss Harriet Pemberton. You rise as they enter, offering your hand first to Mrs. Pemberton as the senior lady, then to her daughter. "How lovely to see you both," you say with a warm but restrained smile. "Please, do be seated." Mrs. Pemberton takes the chair nearest yours, a privilege of her age and status, while Harriet sits slightly farther away on a small settee. Thompson withdraws, closing the drawing-room doors to ensure privacy. "I trust you are well, Mrs. Blackwood," Mrs. Pemberton begins, removing her gloves, an indication she intends to stay for tea. "Quite well, thank you," you reply. "And yourselves? I hope Mr. Pemberton has recovered from his cold?" He has, most gratefully. Dr. Wilson's tonic worked wonders. The conversation proceeds along carefully prescribed lines, health inquiries, mild comments on the weather, gentle observations about shared acquaintances, nothing controversial, nothing too personal, nothing that might provoke strong emotion. Harriet sits quietly, speaking only when addressed directly. As an unmarried young lady, her role is primarily to observe and learn the intricate dance of social conversation from her mother and you. "We attended Lady Harrington's musical evening on Thursday," Mrs. Pemberton mentions. "I believe you were missed." This is both information and gentle inquiry. Why weren't you there? Was there a slight intended? A social obligation ignored? Yes, unfortunately, Lady Caroline was feeling unwell, and I felt I should remain at home with her, you explain. This reason family duty is unimpeachable. Of course, Mrs. Pemberton nods, satisfied with your explanation. Family must come first. Lady Harrington did ask after you most particularly. Translation: your absence was noted in high places, but your excuse is accepted. The conversation continues in this vein, every comment laden with subtext, every question containing multiple layers of meaning. It's exhausting and exhilarating, a verbal fencing match conducted with the utmost politeness. After precisely 15 minutes, Thompson reappears with the tea tray. The timing is impeccable. Tea is offered as a courtesy to valued visitors, extending their call beyond the minimum polite duration. "Shall I pour, ma'am?" Thompson asks. "Thank you, Thompson. I shall do it." Pouring tea is the hostess's privilege, a demonstration of your domestic competence and grace. You take your place at the tea table, asking each guest her preference. "Just a splash of milk, thank you," Mrs. Pemberton says. "The same for me, please," echoes Harriet. You pour with practiced precision, adding milk in the exact proportion preferred, and hand each cup with saucer to your guests. Small sandwiches, delicate cakes and biscuits are offered from tiered plates. The ritual of tea creates a natural shift in conversation topics. Comments on the quality of the blend, compliments on the refreshments, and observations about recent social gatherings now become appropriate. "Have you heard about the Wilsons' dinner party last week?" Mrs. Pemberton asks, delicately balancing her teacup. Such an unusual selection of guests. This is gossip disguised as casual conversation, attesting of boundaries to see what you know and what you'll share. "I heard it was quite well attended," you reply neutrally, neither confirming nor denying any specific knowledge. Yes, Mrs. Pemberton sips her tea. Mrs. Wilson seated Mr. Fairchild next to Lady Thornton, quite a daring arrangement considering their history. The implication is clear. There's some scandal or awkwardness between these two people that Mrs. Pemberton assumes you know about. But gossiping is dangerous territory. If you appear too eager for sordid details, your own reputation might suffer. Show too little interest and you appear naive or excluded from important social knowledge. "I'm sure Mrs. Wilson had her reasons," you say diplomatically. "Her dinner parties are always so thoughtfully arranged." Mrs. Pemberton smiles, recognizing your skillful deflection. "Indeed, though I wonder what Lady Thornton's husband thought of the seating chart." You steer the conversation to safer waters. "Harriet, I understand you performed at Lady Harrington's musical evening. What piece did you play?" Harriet blushes slightly at being directly addressed. "Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, Mrs. Blackwood." "How lovely. I'm quite fond of Chopin myself." This exchange serves multiple purposes. It gives the shy young lady appropriate attention, demonstrates your cultural knowledge, and gently redirects the conversation away from potentially damaging gossip. As the tea progresses, Thompson appears again to announce new arrivals. "Mrs. James Howard and Miss Charlotte Howard, ma'am." You rise to greet the newcomers, introducing them to the Pembertons. The drawing room dynamic instantly shifts with this addition. Mrs. Pemberton and Mrs. Howard know each other slightly, but aren't close friends. Their daughters have never met. Your role now expands to include facilitating this new social connection. "Miss Howard, I believe you and Miss Pemberton share an interest in watercolour painting," you say, providing the young ladies with an appropriate topic of conversation. Mrs. Howard gives you a grateful look, creating conversational opportunities for her reserved daughter is a kindness. The young ladies begin a tentative exchange about their artistic pursuits while you and the matrons maintain your own discussion. The addition of new guests provides the perfect opportunity for the Pembertons to depart. After a few minutes of general conversation, Mrs. Pemberton places her cup on the side table, the universal signal that her call is concluding. "We mustn't monopolise Mrs. Blackwood's afternoon," she says, rising from her chair. "It has been most pleasant. You stand as well. Thank you so much for calling. It's always a delight to see you both." The farewells follow the same careful protocol as the greetings, handshakes, warm but restrained smiles, appropriate pleasantries. Thompson appears as if by magic to escort the departing guests to the door while you return your attention to Mrs. Howard and her daughter. This pattern repeats throughout your at-home hours. Visitors arrive, are received, exchange carefully calibrated conversation, and depart within appropriate time limits. By 5 o'clock, you've received 6 different calls, each requiring subtle adjustments in your demeanour and conversation to reflect the specific relationship. As the last visitors depart, you allow yourself a moment of relaxation, sinking slightly deeper into your chair. The performance of receiving calls is mentally taxing, a constant calibration of social nuance, status negotiation, and information exchange disguised as casual visiting. Thompson enters with a small silver tray. "The cards from today, ma'am." 8 cards rest on the transom from ladies who called in person, others left by servants on behalf of their mistresses. Each must be properly recorded in your visiting book to ensure you return these calls at the appropriate interval, not too quickly, appearing over-eager, and not too slowly, seeming dismissive. "Thank you, Thompson. I'll record them now." You move to the small writing desk in the corner of the drawing room, opening your Morocco leather visiting book. Inside, meticulous records track every social call made and received, with dates and special circumstances noted. This book is your social ledger, a record of debts incurred and paid in the currency of visits. For each card received today, you must make a reciprocal call within 1 to 2 weeks. These return visits have their own strict protocols. If the lady is at home when you call, you'll be received for the standard 15 to 30 minutes. If she's not receiving visitors, you'll leave your card, having fulfilled your social obligation regardless. Looking at Mrs. Pemberton's card, you note in your book that she called on Tuesday, February 15th, was received, and stayed for tea. This creates a specific level of social debt higher than a brief call, lower than a dinner invitation. You'll need to return her call next week on her at-home day of Thursday. The Howard ladies' visit is recorded similarly. The remaining cards, those left without the ladies actually entering your home, require a different response. For these, leaving your own card at their homes will be sufficient. You sigh softly, contemplating the complex social calculus. An entire afternoon devoted to this elaborate exchange of pleasantries and subtle position-taking may seem absurd to modern sensibilities, but in Victorian society, these rituals serve vital purposes. The calling card system creates clear boundaries around social interactions, preventing the awkwardness of unexpected visits. It establishes and maintains social hierarchies while providing mechanisms for new connections. Perhaps most importantly, it gives women, otherwise severely restricted in Victorian society, a domain they control almost completely. Men have their clubs, their business dealings, their political sphere. Women have the drawing room, where social reputations are made or broken, marriages are subtly arranged, and influence is quietly exercised through the power of inclusion or exclusion. As you finish recording the day's calls, Martha appears at the drawing room door. "Shall I help you dress for dinner, ma'am? Lady Caroline mentioned Canon Pembroke will be joining you this evening." You close your visiting book with a small sigh. The afternoon performance is complete, but the evening's social theatre is yet to come. Yes, thank you, Martha. I'll wear the burgundy silk with the black lace overlay. You rise, smoothing your green afternoon dress. The social demands of a Victorian lady are relentless each part of the day, bringing its own strict requirements and expectations. The morning's domestic management, the afternoon's social calls, and now the evening's formal dinner, each with its own costume and script. As you follow Martha upstairs to prepare for dinner, you mentally review the day's social exchanges, noting any potential missteps or particularly successful moments. In the complex game of Victorian society, self-awareness is crucial. One wrong comment, one misinterpreted gesture, one social obligation overlooked, and your carefully maintained position could be compromised. The burgundy dinner dress awaits, along with yet another set of rule-stable etiquette dinner conversation, proper deference to the evening's guest, but that's a story for another hour in our exploration of Victorian life. After Martha helps you change into your burgundy silk dinner dress, your transformation for the evening is nearly complete. The burgundy fabric, rich and lustrous in the lamplight, creates a suitable canvas for the black lace overlay, formal enough for dinner with a clergyman, but not so ostentatious as to seem like you're attending a ball. Martha fastens a simple pearl necklace around your throat and secures matching earrings. The jewellery is deliberately understated. Anything more elaborate would be inappropriate for a home dinner, even with guests. "The mistress's jewels tonight?" Martha asks, referring to your mother-in-law's elaborate pieces. "No," you reply. "Lady Caroline will be wearing her own. It wouldn't do for us to match." This small detail matters enormously. In the carefully calibrated world of Victorian dinner etiquette, outshining your mother-in-law would be a grave faux pas. Your hair is restyled into an elegant evening arrangement, higher and more formal than your afternoon coiffure, but still relatively simple by evening standards. A few small pearl pins provide the only ornamentation. "There we are, ma'am," Martha says, stepping back to assess her work. "Would you like a light dusting of rice powder?" "Yes, just a touch." Martha applies the powder with a soft puff, removing the slight shine from your face. Obvious makeup remains taboo for respectable women, but this subtle correction is acceptable, enhancing nature rather than disguising it. A soft knock at the bedroom door signals the arrival of Thompson. "Excuse me, ma'am. Lady Caroline asked me to inform you that Canon Pembroke has arrived and she suggests you join them in the drawing room in 10 minutes. This, too, is carefully timed. As the lady of the house, you don't greet guests immediately upon their arrival that would appear overeager, but neither can you delay too long, which would seem disrespectful. 10 minutes is precisely correct, long enough to establish your position, not so long as to give offence. "Thank you, Thompson. Please tell Lady Caroline I shall be down directly." Thompson bows slightly and withdraws. You turn back to the mirror for a final assessment, checking that every detail is correct. In Victorian dining, appearance isn't merely vanity, it's a fundamental form of respect for your guests and your position. "I believe we're finished, Martha." "Thank you." "Yes, Mum. Will you need me again before bedtime?" "No, I don't expect so. You may retire after dinner is served." You rise from your dressing table, mentally preparing for the evening ahead. Dinner is far more than just a meal. It's a complex social performance where every movement, every word, every glance carries meaning. The stakes are particularly high tonight with Canon Pembroke present. As a senior clergyman, his good opinion matters to your family's social standing, and his connection to the bishop means his influence extends into the highest circles. You descend the stairs with measured steps, neither rushing, undignified, nor dawdling, inconsiderate. The drawing room doors are open and you can hear the low murmur of conversation between Lady Caroline and Canon Pembroke. Harold's voice is absent. He must be running late. At precisely the 10-minute mark, you enter the drawing room. Both occupants turn towards you, conversation pausing. Canon Pembroke rises immediately from his chair. A gentleman always stands when a lady enters the room. "Ah, Elizabeth," Lady Caroline says. Canon Pembroke was just sharing news of the bishop's fundraising efforts for the new hospital wing. "How wonderful," you reply with a warm smile, crossing to offer your hand to the canon. "Good evening, Canon Pembroke. How lovely to see you again." "Mrs. Blackwood," he replies, taking your hand briefly. "The pleasure is mine. You're looking very well." "Thank you. I hope I find you in good health?" "Indeed, most fortunate in that regard." This exchange, though seemingly banal, is crucial to establishing the proper tone for the evening formal, but friendly, respectful, but not subservient. You take your seat in a chair positioned to form a conversational triangle with Lady Caroline and the canon, maintaining proper distance while allowing easy discourse. "I was just telling the canon about your work with the parish charity committee," Lady Caroline says. "This is a gift from your mother-in-law, an opportunity to display your virtuous activities to an important social connection. Despite your occasionally difficult relationship, Lady Caroline understands the importance of presenting a united family front to outsiders." "It's very rewarding work," you say modestly. "We've been able to provide winter coats for 20 children from the poorest families this year." "Most commendable," Canon Pembroke nods approvingly. "Christian charity expressed through practical assistance, just as our Lord would have us do." The conversation continues in this vein for several more minutes until Thompson appears at the drawing room door. "Excuse me, my lady, madam. Mr. Blackwood has returned and asks me to convey his apologies for the delay. He will join you shortly. Also, dinner will be served in 15 minutes. "Thank you, Thompson," Lady Caroline replies. This announcement serves a practical purpose, allowing you all to conclude the pre-dinner conversation naturally, but also reminds the canon of Harold's absence, which requires explanation. "I believe Harold was delayed at his club," Lady Caroline says, providing the necessary context. "Some committee business regarding new membership applications." "Ah, yes, important work," Canon Pembroke nods. "The character of a gentleman's club is defined by its members. Careful selection is essential." 5 minutes later, Harold enters, properly attired in evening dress black tailcoat, white waistcoat and crisp white shirt with a standing collar. "Canon Pembroke, please accept my sincere apologies for not being here to greet you," Harold says, shaking the clergyman's hand. "Club business ran unexpectedly long." "Not at all, my dear fellow. Lady Caroline and Mrs. Blackwood have been most engaging company." Harold kisses his mother's cheek, then briefly touches your hand in greeting, the appropriate level of affection for a husband to display in company. The conversation resumes, now with Harold's participation, until Thompson appears again. "Dinner is served, my lady." This announcement initiates a precisely choreographed sequence. Harold offers his arm to Lady Caroline as the senior lady present. Canon Pembroke, as the male guest, offers his arm to you. This pairing for the walk to the dining room reflects the strict hierarchy of Victorian social occasions. The procession moves from the drawing room to the dining room, where Thompson stands ready to assist with seating. The table, though set for only 4, displays all the formality of a much larger gathering. A spotless white damask tablecloth covers the mahogany table. At each place setting sits a bewildering array of silverware, 3 forks to the left of the plate, 3 knives and a soup spoon to the right, with dessert utensils placed horizontally above the plate. Crystal wine glasses. 3 different shapes for different wines stand at the top right of each setting. Folded linen napkins, each displaying your family's embroidered monogram, rest on the gold-rimmed plates. The seating arrangement follows strict protocol. Harold takes the host's position at the foot of the table, while you, as hostess, sit at the head. Lady Caroline, as the female guest of honour, sits to Harold's right. Canon Pembroke sits to your right. This arrangement ensures that each lady has a gentleman with whom to converse during dinner. Thompson assists you with your chair, pushing it in gently as you sit. The others are similarly helped into their seats by the 2 footmen assisting with dinner service. Only once everyone is properly seated does the meal begin. The soup course arrives first, a clear consommé served in delicate china bowls. You wait for Lady Caroline to begin, as the senior lady present, before lifting your own spoon. The proper technique for soup is to dip the spoon away from yourself, fill it partially, never completely, and sip quietly from the side, never the tip of the spoon. Conversation during soup is minimal. The focus is on the food itself. Only once the soup bowls are removed does discourse properly begin. Canon Pembroke, Harold mentioned you recently returned from London, you say, initiating the dinner conversation. I hope your journey was pleasant. Quite agreeable, thank you. The railways have made travel so much more civilised than in my youth. The fish course arrives, poached salmon with a delicate dill sauce. New plates and appropriate utensils appear as if by magic, the servants moving with practised efficiency. You're careful to use the correct fork and knife, the fish knife and fork being smaller and slightly different in shape from those intended for meat. Using the wrong utensil would be a glaring error, marking you as ill-bred despite your position. The bishop speaks very highly of St. Thomas's Hospital, Canon Pembroke continues. Their new surgical techniques are quite remarkable. Indeed, Harold agrees, medical science progresses at an astonishing rate. Dr. Wilson was telling me just last week about the advances in antiseptic procedures. The conversation shifts to medical advances, an acceptable dinner topic as it relates to charity work and scientific progress, without veering into potentially disturbing specifics. Politics, religion, beyond generalities, money and personal health issues remain strictly off-limits at the Victorian dinner table. As each course is served, the fish followed by a small palate cleanser of lemon ice, then the meat course of roast beef with seasonal vegetables, new plates and utensils appear. The outer utensils are used first, working inward with each course. Wine glasses are filled by the footmen who move clockwise around the table, serving from the right. You're careful to take only small sips of each wine, as a lady becoming visibly affected by alcohol would be scandalous. Throughout the meal, you monitor the flow of conversation, ensuring no one is left out and no inappropriate topics arise. This is the hostess's primary responsibility, maintaining pleasant discourse while subtly steering away from dangerous waters. When Lady Caroline mentions a mutual acquaintance's recent illness, you smoothly redirect. I hear their daughter's watercolours were quite remarkable at the parish exhibition, you interject, before details of the illness can be discussed. Oh yes, Lady Caroline follows your lead. She has quite a talent. Studied in Paris, I believe. Crisis averted. Specific health complaints are not suitable dinner conversation, potentially spoiling appetites and causing discomfort. The meat plates are cleared, making way for the sweet corsair moulded blancmange with preserved cherries. Again, the appropriate spoons appear, and you're careful to use the correct one. Throughout the meal, you communicate with the servants through almost imperceptible gestures, a slight nod when a plate can be removed, a subtle glance when a glass needs refilling. This silent language allows service to proceed seamlessly without interrupting conversation. When the dessert course is complete, you catch Lady Caroline's eye. She gives an almost imperceptible nod, the signal that it's time for the ladies to withdraw, leaving the gentlemen to their port and cigars. You rise from your chair, and Lady Caroline follows suit. The men stand immediately. "Shall we withdraw, Lady Caroline?" you ask, maintaining the fiction that it's a spontaneous decision rather than a ritual as old as time. "Yes, my dear, let's leave the gentlemen to their port." Canon Pembroke and Harold remain standing until you and Lady Caroline have left the room, the doors closing behind you. In the drawing room, tea awaits, another carefully orchestrated ritual. You take your seat near the tea table with Lady Caroline in the most comfortable chair. Canon Pembroke seems in good spirits, you observe as you pour tea into the delicate cups. Indeed, I believe the bishop has hinted at a possible cathedral position for him, most advantageous for our parish to have such a connection. This quiet interval between dinner and the gentleman's return serves multiple purposes, allowing men their masculine conversation over cigars and port while giving women time for more intimate discourse without male presence. After precisely 20 minutes, the proper interval for port and cigars, Harold and Canon Pembroke rejoin you in the drawing room. Again, you all rise as they enter, resuming your seats only when they are settled. The evening continues with general conversation, perhaps some music if a guest is known to perform well, until the appropriate hour for departure, never too early, suggesting boredom, nor too late, imposing on hosts. When Canon Pembroke finally indicates his intention to leave, around 10 o'clock the farewells follow another precise sequence. Harold rings for Thompson, who brings the canon's hat, coat and walking stick. You all express appropriate pleasantries, and Harold personally sees the canon to the door, a mark of respect for an important guest. Once he's gone, the family dynamic shifts. The performance for outsiders concludes, though the slightly relaxed etiquette of family interaction still follows its own rules. "A pleasant evening, I think," Lady Caroline observes. Canon Pembroke seemed quite impressed with the meal. "Cook outdid herself with the blanc mange," you agree. "I believe I shall retire," Lady Caroline announces. "Good night, Harold." Elizabeth. "Good night, Mother," Harold says, kissing her cheek. "Good night, Lady Caroline," you add with a respectful nod. After she withdraws, you and Harold have a brief interval alone, the only truly private time in your tightly scheduled day. "Successful dinner, my dear," Harold says, finally allowing himself to relax slightly. Canon Pembroke mentioned the bishop may visit next month. We shall need to plan accordingly. "Of course," you nod. "I'll speak with Mrs. Wilson about additional staff for such an occasion." Even in this private moment, conversation revolves around social obligations and appearances. The Victorian marriage, like everything else in your world, operates according to carefully defined parameters. Soon, you too prepare to retire, the day's social performances complete. As Martha helps you undress for bed, removing the pearl jewellery, unlacing your corset, brushing out your elaborately arranged hair, you mentally review the evening. The dinner succeeded on all fronts. Proper etiquette was maintained, pleasant conversation flowed without incident, the food and service reflected well on your household, and an important social connection was strengthened. In the complex accounting of Victorian social capital, tonight represents a clear gain. Yet as you finally lie in your bed, free from the physical constraints of corset and heavy skirts, free from the mental constraints of constant social vigilance, you can't help but wonder about the purpose of it all. The elaborate rules, the precise timing, the careful, conversational navigation, a lifetime of learning and executing these social codes. For the upper classes, like Lady Caroline, these rules maintain the social order that keeps them comfortably at the top. For the striving middle classes, like many of your acquaintances, they provide a roadmap to respectability and advancement. For everyone, they create a shared language of behaviour that makes social interaction predictable in an otherwise chaotic world. As you drift towards sleep, you know tomorrow will bring another carefully choreographed day of social performance, morning calls to return, household matters to oversee, correspondence to maintain, appearances to uphold, the never-ending dance of Victorian propriety. But that's a story for another hour of our journey through the bizarre world of Victorian etiquette. Morning brings a new day of carefully orchestrated social obligations. After breakfast, you retire to your private sitting room to attend to correspondence, another area of Victorian life governed by elaborate rules of etiquette. Your writing desk contains everything required for proper letter writing: monogrammed stationery, several pens with different nibs, black ink for everyday correspondence, violet ink for letters of condolence, sealing wax in various colours, and your personal seal. Today's task is responding to an invitation that arrived with yesterday's post. You unfold the heavy cream cardstock embossed with the Harrington family crest. Lady Harrington requests the pleasure of Mr. and Mrs. Harold Blackwood's company at a musical evening on Thursday, the 24th of February at 8 o'clock. RSVP. This requires a prompt and proper response. You select a sheet of your best stationery and compose a brief, formal acceptance. Mr. and Mrs. Harold Blackwood accept with pleasure Lady Harrington's kind invitation for Thursday, the 24th of February. The wording is deliberately impersonal, written in the third person, without salutation or signature. Anything more familiar would be inappropriate, unless Lady Harrington were an intimate friend, which she is not. You fold the response carefully, slip it into an envelope, and add it to the small pile of outgoing correspondence for Thompson to post. The invitation itself goes into your engagement book, ensuring you won't double book that evening. Martha, you call, ringing the small silver bell. She appears promptly. "Yes, ma'am." "We've been invited to Lady Harrington's for a musical evening next Thursday. Please ensure my blue silk evening gown is ready, and I'll need the pearl and sapphire jewellery set from the safe." "Yes, ma'am. Will there be anything else?" You consider for a moment. "Yes. Please ask Thompson to inform Mr. Blackwood about the engagement, and check if Lady Caroline received an invitation as well." Lady Harrington's musical evenings are renowned for featuring accomplished amateur musicians from among her acquaintance, along with the occasional professional performer. These events occupy a specific place in the hierarchy of Victorian entertainment, more formal than a small dinner party, less elaborate than a ball. Later that afternoon, Harold returns from his club with news. "Elizabeth, I've secured tickets for the theatre tomorrow night. The new Gilbert and Sullivan operetta, quite the talk of the town." "How lovely," you reply, already mentally calculating which evening dress would be appropriate and what time you'll need to begin preparing. "I've invited the Pembertons to join us," he adds. "Their box is adjacent to ours, and Mrs. Pemberton mentioned they were eager to see the production." Theatre outings, like every Victorian social activity, come with their own elaborate etiquette. You'll need your finest evening dress, not quite as formal as for a ball, but certainly more elaborate than for a dinner party. Opera glasses will be essential, as will an elegant evening fan. Gloves, of course, are non-negotiable. The next evening arrives and preparations begin early. A proper theatre toilet requires even more attention than usual, as the harsh gaslight of the theatre is unforgiving to any imperfection. Martha arranges your hair in an elaborate style appropriate for theatre attendance, not too high, which would block the view of those seated behind you, but elegant enough to display your social status. Your dress for the evening is a deep emerald silk with black lace trim, the décolletage lower than for a home dinner, but still modest by evening standards. Long white gloves extend above your elbows, and your jewellery is carefully chosen. A diamond necklace on loan from Lady Caroline, a gesture of approval for this social outing, with matching earrings. Harold, dressed in full evening attire, white tie and tails, the most formal of men's wear, inspects you with approval. "You look splendid, my dear. The carriage is waiting." The journey to the theatre is brief but significant, a chance to be seen in your family carriage, a visible display of status in a society obsessed with outward signs of position. Upon arrival at the theatre, Harold hands you down from the carriage, careful to shield you from the curious eyes of passers-by. Inside the grand lobby, you spot the Pembertons and exchange greetings. "Mrs. Blackwood, you look positively radiant," Mrs. Pemberton says warmly. "You're too kind," you reply with practised modesty. "Your gown is exquisite, is it, from Madame Laurent's?" This exchange of compliments serves multiple purposes, affirming your mutual recognition of each other's taste and status, while demonstrating the proper feminine virtues of modesty and generosity. Harold and Mr. Pemberton discuss business matters quietly, while you and Mrs. Pemberton engage in light conversation. Harriet Pemberton stands slightly apart, properly subdued as befits an unmarried young lady in public. When the bell rings announcing the performance will begin shortly, the gentlemen escort you to your box. Harold takes your wrap, arranges your chair, and ensures you have your programme and opera glasses properly situated before taking his own seat. The theatre box itself is a social stage positioned to provide both a view of the performance and, equally important, visibility to other patrons. Being seen at the theatre in proper attire with appropriate companions is as crucial as seeing the performance itself. As the curtain rises, you settle into the particular posture required for theatre attendance, attentive but not overly reactive. Excessive emotional displays during performance are considered vulgar. A gentle laugh at comedic moments, a subtle dab at the eye during poignant scenes, these are the limit of acceptable reaction. During the intermission, the social aspect of theatre attendance takes precedence. Harold fetches refreshments while you and Mrs. Pemberton discuss the performance thus far, careful to demonstrate cultural knowledge without appearing pretentious. Several acquaintances stop by your box to exchange greetings, each interaction a brief display of social connection, carefully calibrated to reflect the exact degree of intimacy between your families. When Lady Harrington appears at the entrance to your box, both you and Mrs. Pemberton rise immediately, a mark of respect for her superior social position. "Mrs. Blackwood, Mrs. Pemberton, how delightful to see you both," Lady Harrington says warmly. "Are you enjoying the performance?" "Immensely, Lady Harrington," you reply. "The soprano is particularly impressive." "Indeed, I've invited her to perform at my musical evening next week. I believe you'll be attending." "We're looking forward to it with great pleasure," you confirm. This brief exchange serves multiple purposes. It publicly displays Lady Harrington's approval of your family, confirms your invitation to her exclusive event, and establishes a connection between this public entertainment and the private social gathering to follow. When the bell signals the end of intermission, Lady Harrington departs with a gracious nod, and you retake your seats for the second act. The remainder of the performance passes pleasantly, and when the final curtain falls, you applaud with appropriate enthusiasm, not too exuberant, not too restrained. The journey home provides an opportunity to discuss the performance with Harold, exchanging observations and opinions that would be too detailed for public conversation. The tenor seemed rather strained in the second act, Harold remarks. Yes, though the chorus was quite impressive throughout, you add. This private critique is another form of social performance demonstrating cultural discernment without the vulgarity of public criticism. Upon returning home, you find Lady Caroline still awake, reading in the drawing room. "How was the performance?" she inquires. "Quite delightful," you reply, sharing a few highlights while Harold rings for a late-night tea service. Lady Harrington mentioned she's engaged the soprano for her musical evening next week, Harold adds, knowing his mother will appreciate this connection between public entertainment and private social gatherings. Most appropriate, Lady Caroline nods approvingly. Her musical evenings are always tastefully arranged. The following week brings the anticipated invitation to an altogether different form of entertainment, a ball at the Wilsons' grand home. Unlike the theatre or a musical evening, a ball represents the pinnacle of Victorian social entertainment, with the most elaborate etiquette requirements of all. The invitation specifies dancing rather than merely evening, a crucial distinction indicating you should prepare for formal ballroom etiquette rather than simply conversation and light entertainment. Preparation for a ball begins days in advance. Your best ball gown, a pale blue silk with crystal beading, must be inspected for any flaws. Your dancing slippers must be immaculate, and your most impressive jewellery must be ready. On the evening of the ball, Martha spends nearly 2 hours on your hair and toilette. The result is a transformation from everyday elegance to ballroom splendour. Your gown, cut lower than for any other social occasion, displays your shoulders and upper arms to advantage. Long white gloves extend above your elbows. These will remain on throughout the evening, except during supper. Harold, resplendent in white tie and tails, offers his arm as you descend the stairs. Lady Caroline, who rarely attends balls at her age, inspects you both with a critical eye. "You'll do the family credit," she pronounces high praise from such a source. "The Wilsons' home blazes with light as your carriage approaches. Footmen in livery assist you from the carriage, and you enter the mansion's grand foyer where the host and hostess greet arriving guests." "Mr. and Mrs. Blackwood, how delightful," Mrs. Wilson says warmly, taking your hand briefly. "Thank you for including us," you reply, the practiced phrase rolling off your tongue. The ballroom itself is a spectacular sight, crystal chandeliers illuminating a polished floor. Musicians positioned discreetly at one end, flowers and greenery artfully arranged to soften the grand space without impeding movement. You and Harold separate almost immediately upon entering, another unique feature of ball etiquette. Unlike other social gatherings where married couples remain largely together, balls allow for carefully regulated mingling across gender lines through the formal structure of dance. Harold is quickly claimed by Mrs. Pemberton for the first dancer courtesy to acknowledge their family's friendship. You are approached by Mr. Wilson, your host, who as a matter of etiquette must dance with several of the principal lady guests. "Mrs. Blackwood, may I have the honour of the first dance?" he asks with a formal bow. "With pleasure, Mr. Wilson," you reply, offering your hand. The orchestra strikes up a quadrillea formal structured dance involving 4 couples. You take your position opposite Mr. Wilson, careful to maintain perfect posture and a pleasantly neutral expression. Dancing is not an opportunity for excessive emotional flirtation, but rather a carefully choreographed social ritual. The steps of the quadrille are familiar to all properly educated Victorians. You execute them with grace, but not showiness, displaying skill without drawing undue attention to yourself. Throughout the dance, conversation remains light and impersonal. The dance floor is not the place for serious discussion or intimate exchange. When the quadrille concludes, Mr. Wilson returns you to the edge of the dance floor with a bow. "Thank you for the honour, Mrs. Blackwood." "The pleasure was mine, Mr. Wilson." These formal phrases, exchanged thousands of times across Victorian ballrooms, maintain the fiction that dance is about courtesy rather than enjoyment or, heaven forbid, physical attraction. For the next dance, you're approached by Mr. Fairchild, a business associate of Harold's. "Mrs. Blackwood, might I request the honour of the next dance?" You glance at your dance card, the small booklet attached to your wrist by a silk cord where gentlemen pencil their names for specific dances. The next slot is open, so you nod your acceptance. "Thank you, Mrs. Blackwood," he says, writing his name in the appropriate space. This dance is a waltz more intimate than the quadrille, as it involves continuous contact with your partner rather than the changing formations of the quadrille. Mr. Fairchild places his right hand properly at your waist, while you rest your left hand lightly on his shoulder. Your right hand meets his left, held at shoulder height. The propriety of the waltz was initially questioned in early Victorian society due to this continuous contact between partners, but by the 1870s it has become fully acceptable in respectable ballrooms. As you move through the steps of the waltz, conversation flows easily between you and Mr. Fairchild, discussions of mutual acquaintances, recent cultural events, his children's education, nothing personal, nothing controversial, but pleasant social exchange that cements the connection between your families. After several more dances with various partners, never the same gentleman twice in succession, which would suggest improper preference, Harold appears at your side. "Supper is being served, my dear. Shall we?" The supper interval at a ball provides a rare opportunity for married couples to reunite. Harold escorts you to the supper room, where elegant tables are laden with cold meats, delicate sandwiches, sweets and champagne. Temporary removal of gloves is permitted during supper, the only time during a ball when this breach of formal etiquette is acceptable. You carefully peel off your right glove to eat, keeping your left gloved as much as possible. Conversation at supper is livelier than on the dance floor, though still carefully modulated to avoid controversial topics. You and Harold join a table with the Pembertons and another couple, forming a congenial group for the 30-minute respite. "The music is particularly fine tonight," Mrs. Pemberton observes. "Indeed," you agree. "I believe Mrs. Wilson engaged musicians from the Philharmonic Society." This exchange of observations continues, punctuated by appreciative comments about the food, the decorations, and the general success of the event. Praise for your hostess is essential no matter what flaws you might privately perceive. After supper, you replace your glove before returning to the ballroom for the second half of the evening. Dancing resumes with renewed energy, partners change according to the notations on dance cards, and the complex social ballet continues. As the hour grows late, around 2 in the morning, the ball begins to wind down. Departures, like arrivals, follow a careful sequence. The most senior guests generally leave first, setting the precedent for others to follow. Those of middling rank, like your family, depart in the middle wave, while the youngest and most energetic may stay until the final dance. In the carriage ride home, you and Harold compare observations about the evening, who danced with whom, which families appeared particularly friendly, which young ladies seemed to attract the most attention. Young Harriet Pemberton danced every dance, Harold notes. She seems to be making a favourable impression this season. Indeed. Lady Harrington spoke to her at length during supper, a promising sign. This quiet analysis of social dynamics is a crucial aspect of Victorian entertainment. Each ball, each theatre outing, each musical evening provides not only enjoyment but information, the currency of social advancement and connection. As Martha helps you undress in the quiet pre-dawn hours, removing the elaborate ball gown, unpinning your hair and wiping away the subtle enhancements to your complexion, you reflect on the evening's successes. You maintained proper decorum throughout, engaged appropriately with various social connections, and represented your family with dignity. The complex rules governing Victorian entertainment, which dances are acceptable, which partners are appropriate, how to behave in a theatre box when gloves may be removed, serve multiple purposes. They provide clear guidelines in potentially chaotic social situations. They reinforce class distinctions while allowing controlled crossing of social boundaries, and they protect, in theory, vulnerable young women from improper advances or compromising situations. Tomorrow will bring different social obligations, perhaps morning calls to discuss the ball with other attendees, notes of thanks to send to hosts and hostesses, preparations for upcoming entertainments. The ceaseless cycle of Victorian social life continues, each event building upon the last in an intricate web of obligation and opportunity. But that's a story for another hour of our journey through the bizarre world of Victorian etiquette. The morning after the Wilson Ball, you awaken later than usual, small indulgence permitted after such a late night. Despite the hour, Martha has been up since dawn, carefully cleaning your ball gown and gloves, ensuring they're ready for the next grand occasion. As you sip your morning tea, a soft knock at your bedroom door announces Harold. "Good morning, my dear," he says, entering with an unusual spring in his step. "I trust you slept well despite our late return?" "Quite well, thank you," you reply, curious about his evident excitement. "I've just had the most interesting conversation with Lady Caroline," he continues. "It seems her goddaughter, young Miss Eleanor Griffith, is coming to stay with us next month for the season." This news requires careful consideration. Taking charge of a young lady during her first season is both an honour and an enormous responsibility. As her temporary guardian, you'll be responsible not only for her social introduction, but for protecting her reputation and guiding her through the treacherous waters of courtship and potential marriage negotiations. "That's a significant undertaking," you observe cautiously. "Is Lady Caroline certain she wishes to entrust the girl to us rather than overseeing her season herself? At 73, she feels she hasn't the energy for the constant vigilance required," Harold explains. "She trusts us to represent the family appropriately, and of course, your guidance will be invaluable to the girl." The implicit compliment isn't lost on you. Being entrusted with a young lady's debut season is a vote of confidence in your social standing and judgment. "When will she arrive?" you ask, mentally rearranging your spring calendar to accommodate this new responsibility. The 15th of March, that gives us 3 weeks to prepare. The preparations for Miss Griffith's arrival will be extensive. The blue guest room must be refreshed, additional staff might be needed, and your own wardrobe requires assessment. As the girl's sponsor, your appearance at every event will be scrutinized even more carefully than usual. Most importantly, you'll need to review the intricate rules governing courtship in Victorian society. What was second nature during your own coming out must now be explicitly considered as you prepare to guide another young woman through the marriage market. Later that morning, you meet with Lady Caroline to discuss the particulars of Miss Griffith's stay. Eleanor is 18, well-educated, and from an excellent family, Lady Caroline explains as you sit in her private sitting room. Her father is Sir James Griffith, a cousin of my late husband's. The girl's mother died when she was 12, and she's been at boarding school since then. What is her temperament? you inquire, knowing this will determine how closely you'll need to monitor her. Generally sensible, though with a touch of her father's impulsiveness, she'll need firm guidance but not harsh restriction. Above all, she requires a successful season and a suitable match. The unspoken reality of Victorian courtship hangs in the air between you. For a young woman of good family but modest personal fortune, securing an appropriate husband is not merely desirable, it's essential. With few respectable careers open to women of her class, marriage represents her primary hope for financial security and social position. I'll do everything possible to ensure her success, you promise. Perhaps we should discuss which young men might be suitable prospects. Lady Caroline nods approvingly at your practical approach. The Pemberton boy is well positioned in his father's company, though somewhat lacking in polish. Young Lord Hartfield is of excellent family, if rather limited means, and Mr. Wilson's nephew, James Crawford, has recently returned from India with a substantial fortune, though his connections are not of the first rank. This clinical assessment of potential husbands might seem cold to modern sensibilities, but in Victorian England, marriage is a social and economic alliance as much as a personal relationship. For all but the wealthiest families, romantic love is a pleasant bonus rather than a prerequisite. I'll arrange a dinner party shortly after her arrival, you suggest. Something small with just 2 or 3 eligible gentlemen. That will allow for introductions in a controlled setting before the larger events of the season begin. An excellent plan, Lady Caroline agrees. And I suggest we engage Madame Laurent to create several new gowns for the girl. First impressions are crucial. As you continue planning, Thompson appears at the door. "Excuse me, Lady Caroline, Mrs. Blackwood, Miss Harriet Pemberton and her mother have called. They're waiting in the drawing room." This visit isn't unexpected. After a major social event like the Wilson Ball, morning calls between the ladies who attended are common, an opportunity to dissect the evening's successes and failures, to note which young ladies attracted attention, which gentlemen seemed attentive, and which families appeared to be negotiating potential matches. You join Lady Caroline in greeting the Pembertons, the conversation quickly turning to last night's events. Young Lord Hartfield seemed quite attentive to Miss Wilson, Mrs. Pemberton observes. He danced with her twice. This simple statement contains volumes of meaning. Dancing twice with the same partner at a ball suggests significant interest, a public declaration of admiration that will be noted by everyone present. "Indeed," you reply, though her father might hope for a more substantial connection. Lord Hartfield's estate is rather encumbered, I understand. The delicate dance of courtship involves not just the young people themselves, but their entire families. Parents, especially fathers, have near absolute authority over their children's marital choices. A father can forbid a match he considers unsuitable, while a mother typically serves as gatekeeper and negotiator, subtly managing which young men gain access to her daughter. "Harriet was much admired last night," Mrs. Pemberton says, with barely concealed pride. "She danced every dance, and Mr. Crawford requested to call on us next week." This announcement is significant. A formal call, with her parents' permission, indicates Mr. Crawford's serious interest in pursuing Harriet. The courtship process has officially begun. "Mr. Crawford is recently returned from India, I believe," you inquire, knowing full well his circumstances but allowing Mrs. Pemberton the pleasure of sharing this advantageous connection. "Yes, after 10 years with the East India Company. He's purchased a charming house in Belgravia and he's looking to establish himself in society." The implications are clear. Mr. Crawford has the financial means to support a wife in comfort, is seeking to improve his social position through marriage to a respectable family, and has chosen Harriet as a potential candidate. For the Pembertons, whose fortune is comfortable but not extensive, such a match would be highly advantageous. He seems a most amiable gentleman, you observe neutrally, neither endorsing nor discouraging the potential match. Until you know more about Mr. Crawford's character and prospects, cautious optimism is the appropriate response. The conversation continues in this vein, with careful probing of intentions and prospects disguised as casual social chatter. After a suitable interval not so short as to seem dismissive, not so long as to seem overly eager for gossip, the Pembertons take their leave. "What do you make of this Mr. Crawford?" Lady Caroline asks once your visitors have departed. "It's difficult to say without further acquaintance. His financial position seems secure, but 10 years in India raises questions about his adaptability to English society. And, of course, we know little of his family." "I shall make inquiries," Lady Caroline decides. This is one of her particular talents, extracting detailed information about anyone of interest to the family through her extensive network of social connections. Later that afternoon, Harold returns from his club with additional information about Mr. Crawford. "He's been proposed for membership," Harold tells you as you sit in the drawing room. "His finances were thoroughly vetted, as is standard procedure. The man appears to have made a substantial fortune in tea and cotton, all quite legitimately. His father was a country solicitor, respectable but not distinguished." This assessment confirms what you suspected. Mr. Crawford represents new money-seeking social advancement through marriage into an established family. The Pembertons, with their solid but unspectacular social position, offer him improved status without being so far above his reach as to make a match impossible. "Do you think Mrs. Pemberton will encourage the connection?" you ask. "Almost certainly. Harriet is 22, not quite on the shelf, but approaching the age where her prospects become more limited each season. Crawford can provide handsomely for her, and his lack of distinguished birth is balanced by his financial security." The brutal economics of the Victorian marriage market are rarely discussed so openly, but between husband and wife, practical considerations can be acknowledged. Young women have a limited window of opportunity, generally between 17 and 25, to secure a husband. Each passing season diminishes their appeal in a market that values youth and novelty. Your thoughts turn to Miss Eleanor Griffith, soon to arrive for her first season. At 18, she's entering the marriage market at the optimal age, young enough to attract a wide range of suitors, but not so young as to seem childish. Your responsibility will be to guide her through the complex social choreography that leads to a successful match. The following weeks pass in a flurry of preparation for Miss Griffith's arrival. The blue guest room is thoroughly cleaned and refreshed with new linens and curtains. You consult with Madame Laurent about appropriate styles for a young debutante, commission calling cards, with Miss Griffith's name beneath your own indicating your sponsorship, and carefully plan her social introduction. On the appointed day, the carriage is sent to the railway station to collect your young guest. You wait in the drawing room with Lady Caroline, both dressed in appropriate afternoon attire, welcoming but not overwhelmingly formal. Thompson announces, "Miss Eleanor Griffith, ma'am." And a slender young woman enters the room. Eleanor Griffith makes a favourable first impression, pretty without being distractingly beautiful, well-postured with a graceful walk, modestly dressed in a travelling costume of blue wool. She curtsies properly to Lady Caroline first, then to you. "Welcome to London, my dear," Lady Caroline says warmly. "You've grown considerably since I last saw you." "Thank you for your kindness in sponsoring my season, Lady Caroline," Eleanor responds, her voice clear and well-modulated, evidence of good schooling. "Mrs. Blackwood will be overseeing your daily activities," Lady Caroline explains, gesturing toward you. "She's exceptionally well-versed in the requirements of society." Eleanor turns to you with another curtsy. "I'm most grateful, Mrs. Blackwood. I hope I shan't disappoint you." "I'm sure you won't," you reply with an encouraging smile. "We shall become well acquainted over the coming weeks." Tea is served and conversation flows easily as you assess your charge more thoroughly. Eleanor appears intelligent, well-educated, and properly respectful of her elders. Her manners are generally correct, though occasional hints of schoolgirl enthusiasm will need to be tempered before her formal introduction to society. After tea, you escort Eleanor to her room, allowing her to rest before dinner. Once alone with Lady Caroline, you share your initial impressions. She seems a promising candidate, you observe, personable without being forward, attractive without being vain. Indeed, with proper guidance and suitable introduction, she should make a respectable match. Sir James has indicated he can provide a dowry of £5,000, not princely, but adequate for her position. The following days are dedicated to Eleanor's preparation. You arrange for final fittings of her new gowns, review the intricacies of proper behaviour in various social settings, and begin instructing her in the crucial details of the courtship process. A gentleman must always be introduced to a lady by a mutual acquaintance, you explain during one of your daily instruction sessions in the drawing room. He may not approach you directly without introduction, nor may he call at the house without explicit permission. Eleanor nods attentively. And if he wishes to speak with me at a ball, he may request a dance, but conversation should remain general and impersonal. Any appearance of particular interest or extended private conversation would be inappropriate before formal courtship begins. The rules governing courtship are exceptionally strict in Victorian society. Unmarried young ladies must never be alone with a gentleman who is not a close family member. Even after a formal courtship begins, meetings occur only in the family drawing room under watchful eyes. Letters between an unmarried lady and gentleman are forbidden unless an engagement is announced. How does a gentleman indicate serious interest? Eleanor asks, her practical question revealing a sensible approach to the marriage market. He may request permission to call specifically upon you, rather than making a general call upon the household. He might seek conversation with you at social gatherings, though always in public view, and he would likely approach Mr. Blackwood or Lady Caroline to inquire about your circumstances and family connections. Before speaking to me, Eleanor seems surprised. Of course, marriage negotiations begin between families, with the young people's preferences considered but not necessarily decisive. This reality of Victorian courtship, that marriage is fundamentally an alliance between families rather than individuals, requires delicate explanation. While forced marriages are increasingly rare in the 1870s, parental approval remains essential, and practical considerations often outweigh romantic inclinations. What if, Eleanor hesitates, then continues carefully, what if one develops an attachment that isn't considered suitable? The question suggests personal experience, and you make a mental note to observe Eleanor carefully at her first social outings. Schoolgirl infatuations with inappropriate young men drawing masters, clergymen's sons, or distant cousins of inadequate means are common and must be firmly discouraged before entering society. Such attachments rarely withstand the practical realities of life. You reply gently but firmly. A woman's comfort, position, and happiness depend greatly on her husband's ability to provide appropriately for her. Romantic feelings, while pleasant, offer poor compensation for material hardship. Eleanor accepts this wisdom with a thoughtful nod. Like most well-bred young women, she's been raised to understand that marriage represents her primary opportunity for financial security and social position. Personal happiness must be found within the boundaries of practical necessity. The dinner party you've arranged for Eleanor's introduction to eligible young men arrives. You've selected the guests carefully, 3 young gentlemen of appropriate background and prospects, accompanied by their parents or guardians to maintain proper supervision. Eleanor makes a favourable impression in her new evening dress of pale blue silk, modest enough for a debutante, but sufficiently fashionable to demonstrate good taste. She converses appropriately at dinner, speaking when addressed, but never dominating the conversation, showing intelligence without challenging male authority. After dinner, when the ladies withdraw to the drawing room while the gentlemen remain for port and cigars, you observe Eleanor's interaction with the other women. This too is a crucial aspect of courtship. A young lady who fails to establish cordial relations with the mothers and sisters of potential suitors will find her prospects severely limited. When the gentlemen rejoin you, young Mr. Pemberton approaches Eleanor for conversation, maintaining an appropriate distance while discussing the latest exhibition at the Royal Academy. You watch discreetly from across the room, close enough to intervene if necessary, but allowing the young people some semblance of private exchange. Miss Griffith seems to be making a favourable impression, Harold observes quietly, joining you by the fireplace. Yes, particularly with young Pemberton, though I'm not certain his prospects are sufficient for Lady Caroline's ambitions for her goddaughter. Perhaps not, but he represents a respectable possibility if more advantageous connections don't materialise. This practical assessment of potential matches continues throughout the evening. By its conclusion, Eleanor has conversed appropriately with all 3 young gentlemen, shown proper deference to their mothers, and neither discouraged nor overly encouraged any particular attention. As the guests depart, you note with approval that Mr. Pemberton requests permission to call again later in the week, a clear indication of interest, but expressed with proper restraint. In the privacy of your bedroom that night, you discuss Eleanor's prospects with Harold. She conducted herself well, you observe as Martha brushes out your hair. No obvious mistakes or inappropriate enthusiasm. Lady Caroline will be pleased. The girl seems sensible enough to understand what's required of her. This mutual assessment of a young woman's marriageability might seem coldly calculating, but in Victorian society, successful navigation of courtship and marriage represents a woman's primary means of securing her future. As Eleanor's sponsors, your responsibility extends beyond simply introducing her to society. You must actively work to ensure she makes a match appropriate to her family's expectations and her own long-term security. The weeks that follow bring a whirlwind of social engagements, morning calls to introduce Eleanor to influential matrons, afternoon teas where she might encounter appropriate young men in informal settings, evening concerts, and smaller balls where her dancing and conversational skills can be displayed to advantage. Throughout these events, you maintain constant vigilance. Every interaction between Eleanor and potential suitors occurs under your watchful eye. No note or flower arrives without your inspection. No invitation is accepted without your approval. This intense supervision, which might appear oppressive to modern sensibilities, represents the essential protection of a young woman's reputation in Victorian society. A single indiscretion, a private conversation without chaperone, an overly familiar letter, even an expression of unguarded emotion in public could irreparably damage Eleanor's prospects. As the season progresses, 3 gentlemen emerge as serious contenders for Eleanor's hand. Mr. Pemberton, earnest and reliable if not brilliantly positioned, Lord Hartfield with his distinguished lineage but limited finances, and Mr. Crawford, whose substantial fortune compensates for his relatively modest background. Each has received permission to call specifically upon Eleanor, each has spoken privately with Harold regarding his intentions, and each has demonstrated appropriate attention at social gatherings. The decision now rests primarily with Lady Caroline as Eleanor's sponsor and representative of her family's interests. Though Eleanor's preferences will be considered, the final approval remains with her godmother and, ultimately, her father. One evening in late April, Lady Caroline summons you to her private sitting room for a serious discussion. I've received a letter from Sir James, she informs you, indicating the document on her writing desk. He expresses satisfaction with Eleanor's progress this season and has authorised me to consider formal offers for her hand. This is a significant development, the transition from general courtship to specific marriage negotiations. Have you a preference among her suitors? You inquire. Mr. Crawford's financial position is most secure, and he appears genuinely attached to the girl. Lord Hartfield's title would provide social advancement but little material comfort. Young Pemberton is a distant third, respectable but unremarkable in both fortune and connection. And Eleanor's inclination? Lady Caroline's expression suggests this is a secondary consideration, but she acknowledges she seems most comfortable with Mr. Crawford. Their conversations appear mutually engaging, and she displays appropriate animation in his presence without unbecoming enthusiasm. Then you'll encourage that connection? I believe so. I shall invite him to call tomorrow afternoon and will speak with him privately regarding his intentions. If his proposals are satisfactory, he may seek a private audience with Eleanor, properly chaperoned, of course. The machinery of Victorian marriage negotiation has been set in motion. What began with carefully orchestrated social introductions now proceeds to formalise discussions of financial arrangements, family expectations, and future provisions. Mr. Crawford calls the following afternoon, is closeted with Lady Caroline for 30 minutes, then granted a brief audience with Eleanor in the drawing room with you present at a discreet distance, close enough to observe but not to overhear their quiet conversation. Eleanor's flushed cheeks and bright eyes when Mr. Crawford departs suggest a favourable reception of whatever was discussed. Lady Caroline confirms this impression when she joins you for tea after his departure. Mr. Crawford has made a formal offer for Eleanor's hand, she announces with satisfaction. His financial proposals are generous, a settlement of £10,000, a household allowance of £800 per annum, and a country house in Surrey in addition to the London residence. These terms are indeed advantageous for a young woman of Eleanor's moderate fortune and good but not exceptional family connections. And Eleanor's response? She has indicated her willingness to accept pending her father's approval. I've written to Sir James recommending the match. We should have his reply within the week. The efficient progression from introduction to negotiation to acceptance has taken less than 2 months, a testament to your skillful management of Eleanor's social presentation and Lady Caroline's expert navigation of the marriage market. Sir James's letter of approval arrives 4 days later and the engagement is formally announced. Only now, with the relationship officially sanctioned, may Eleanor and Mr. Crawford exchange letters, spend limited time in each other's company without constant supervision, and begin planning their future together. The transformation in their interaction is immediate and revealing. Where previously every exchange was carefully controlled and observed, now they may sit together on the same sofa, speak in low voices though still in your presence, and express mutual admiration in carefully restrained terms. Even in this officially sanctioned courtship, strict boundaries remain. Physical contact is limited to the holding of hands, and even this modest intimacy is permitted only in the family drawing room. Unchaperoned meetings remain absolutely forbidden. Letters, though now allowed, are subject to oversight by you or Lady Caroline. As plans for the wedding proceed, Eleanor's demeanour shifts subtly. The careful restraint of courtship gives way to genuine excitement about her future household, her new position as a married woman, and the expanded freedoms this status will afford her. Mrs. Crawford will supervise her own household, entertain her own guests, and manage her own social calendar, she tells you one afternoon as you help her select linens for her trousseau. The use of her future married name and title reveals her eager anticipation of this transition. Yes, though you'll find a husband's expectations create their own constraints, you advise gently. Marriage exchanges one set of obligations for another. This reality of Victorian marriage, that a woman passes from father's authority to husband's, gaining certain freedoms while accepting new responsibilities, requires careful explanation. Eleanor's romantic notions of married life must be tempered with practical understanding of what will be expected of her as Mrs. James Crawford. The wedding itself, scheduled for June at Eleanor's family church in Hampshire, will mark the successful conclusion of your sponsorship. A suitable match has been arranged, family expectations fulfilled, and a young woman successfully launched into her proper social role as wife, future mother, and manager of a respectable household. As you help Eleanor pack her trunks for the return to her father's home before the wedding, you reflect on the complex machinery of Victorian courtship and marriage, the elaborate rules governing every interaction between unmarried men and women, the careful oversight of potential matches, the prioritization of family alliance over personal preference, all serve to maintain social order and ensure appropriate connections. For all its constraints and calculations, the system generally achieves its intended purpose, providing financial security and social position for women in a society that offers few alternative paths to independence. Eleanor's future as Mrs. Crawford appears promising a comfortable home, respectable position, and husband whose temperament seems compatible with her own. The successful conclusion of Eleanor's courtship represents a social triumph for your household as well. Your reputation as an effective sponsor is enhanced, your family's connections expanded, and your position in society subtly strengthened. As Eleanor's carriage departs for Hampshire, Lady Caroline joins you on the front steps. A most satisfactory outcome, she observes with approval. You managed the girl's introduction and courtship admirably. Thank you, Lady Caroline. Mr. Crawford seems genuinely attached to her, which bodes well for their future happiness. Indeed, though a woman's contentment in marriage depends less on romantic attachment than on understanding her proper role and fulfilling it with grace. This practical assessment of marital happiness reflects the Victorian perspective on marriage as primarily a social institution rather than a romantic connection. While affection between spouses is desirable, successful marriages are built on mutual respect, shared values, and clear understanding of gender-specific responsibilities. As you return to the drawing room to resume your normal routine, you contemplate the complex social dance you've just orchestrated, the intricate rules of courtship successfully navigated, the proper connections established, the appropriate outcome achieved. Like so many aspects of Victorian life, the path to marriage is governed by elaborate etiquette designed to maintain social order and proper relationships. But the private realities of marriage after the courtship concludes, the intimate relationships that develop behind closed doors, the balance of power negotiated between husband and wife, the personal accommodations that make a marriage function remain hidden from public view, governed by their own unwritten rules and expectations. That, however, is a story for another hour of our journey through the bizarre world of Victorian etiquette. With Eleanor's departure for her wedding preparations, life in your household returns to its normal rhythm. The social whirl of sponsoring a debutante subsides, leaving more time for domestic management and your own social obligations. One afternoon in late June, you sit in your private sitting room, a sanctuary few outside the family ever enter. Here, away from public scrutiny, a subtle transformation occurs. Your posture, maintained with rigid perfection in company, relaxes slightly. The constant awareness of being observed, the cornerstone of Victorian public life, momentarily fades. A soft knock at the door interrupts your solitude. Martha enters with a silver tray bearing a single letter. "From Mrs. Crawford, ma'am," she says, using Eleanor's new married name, just arrived by the afternoon post. You take the letter, noting the confident handwriting, no longer the careful script of a schoolgirl, but the assured hand of a married woman. Breaking the seal, you unfold several closely written pages. "My dear Mrs. Blackwood," Eleanor begins formally, though the contents soon reveal a more intimate tone than your previous exchanges permitted. As you read, a picture emerges of Eleanor's new life as Mrs. Crawford, the challenges of managing servants, her husband's unexpected habits, the complex social dynamics of his business connections. The letter contains revelations that would never have been permissible during her time under your roof. "Mr. Crawford works such long hours," she writes, "often returning well after I have retired. I find the evenings rather solitary, though I dare not complain lest he think me childish." This glimpse into the private reality of a Victorian marriage illuminates the gap between public performance and domestic truth. The carefully orchestrated courtship, with its chaperoned conversations and regulated interactions, bears little resemblance to the intimate complexities of married life. Eleanor's letter continues with domestic details and social observations, concluding with warm gratitude for your guidance during her season. "Without your instruction, I should have been entirely unprepared for the responsibilities of my position. I remain eternally grateful for your kindness." You fold the letter thoughtfully, contemplating the young woman's transition from protected debutante to married lady. The etiquette guiding this transformation is rarely discussed explicitly. Like so many aspects of Victorian life, the most important rules remain unwritten, transmitted through observation and indirect instruction. "Will you reply today, ma'am?" Martha asks, hovering at the door. "Yes, I think I shall. Please bring my writing case." Your response to Eleanor will necessarily be measured, encouraging without being overly familiar, guiding without seeming to interfere in her new household. The delicate balance of female relationships in Victorian society requires constant calibration, particularly between women of different generations and marital statuses. As you compose your reply, a deeper question surfaces. How much of your own experience as a young wife should you share? The frank reality of marriage, its disappointments and compromises, alongside its comforts and satisfactions, remains largely unspoken in polite society. Your pen hesitates above the paper. Unlike the rigid etiquette governing public behaviour, private communication between married women allows greater honesty, though still within careful boundaries. "Dear Mrs. Crawford," you begin, using her married name to acknowledge her new status. Your response offers practical advice on household management and gentle guidance on navigating her husband's business connections. Between these conventional topics, you weave subtle reassurance about the solitary evenings and early marital adjustments she described. The early months of marriage often require patience as two separate lives blend into a shared existence, you write carefully. What seems difficult now will likely become comfortable routine with time. This measured encouragement represents the Victorian approach to marital challenges, acknowledging difficulties obliquely while emphasizing patience and duty rather than personal satisfaction. As you seal your letter, another knock announces Harold's return from his club. "Good afternoon, my dear," he says, entering your sitting room with unusual enthusiasm. "I've secured tickets for the Wagner performance next Thursday. Lord and Lady Pemberton will join us in our box." "How lovely," you reply, setting aside your correspondence. "I'll wear the purple silk, I think. It hasn't been seen this season." This brief exchange illustrates the compartmentalization typical of Victorian marriages among your class. Harold doesn't inquire about your correspondence or domestic activities. You don't ask about his business at the club. Each maintains a separate sphere of responsibility and interest, coming together primarily for social appearances and major household decisions. This division extends to nearly every aspect of married life in Victorian upper and middle class households. Men occupy the public world of business, politics, and club life. Women oversee domestic management, social connections, and family relationships. Even physical spaces within the home reflect this separation. The study and smoking room are male domains, while the drawing room and morning room fall under female authority. The evening brings another revelation of private Victorian reality, this time from Lady Caroline. As you sit together in the drawing room after dinner, she unexpectedly introduces a delicate topic. "I observed Mrs. Wilson at the Henderson tea yesterday," she begins, her tone deliberately casual. "Her condition is becoming rather obvious, despite her attempts to disguise it." The oblique reference to pregnancy never explicitly mentioned in mixed company represents another layer of Victorian private knowledge. Certain physical realities, particularly those related to female biology, exist in a strange limbo universally known but publicly unacknowledged. "Indeed," you reply with equal indirectness, "I believe she's withdrawn from most social engagements until autumn." This is the expected pattern for women of your class. As pregnancy advances, public appearances decrease until confinement, the period of seclusion before and after childbirth. During these months, a woman essentially vanishes from society, reappearing only after recovery with an infant whose existence is acknowledged without reference to its origins. "A wise decision," Lady Caroline nods. "Though I understand Mr. Wilson continues his usual activities uninterrupted." The subtle criticism in her tone highlights another Victorian double standard. While a pregnant woman must withdraw from society, her husband's social and business life proceeds normally. The physical realities of reproduction affect women's public existence profoundly, while leaving men's virtually untouched. This conversation, conducted entirely in euphemism and implication, demonstrates how Victorian society managed necessary discussion of delicate matters without violating prohibitions against explicit reference to physical realities. Later that evening, as you prepare for bed, Martha shares household gossip gleaned from the servants' another realm of Victorian life with its own unwritten rules and hierarchies. "Cook says the new kitchen maid is working out well, ma'am, quick to learn and respectful to her betters." Martha carefully removes your jewellery, storing each piece in its designated box, though Thompson doesn't care for the way she giggles with the footman. This snippet of below-stairs intelligence reveals the parallel society operating within your household. The servants maintain their own complex social structure, complete with ranks, rivalries, and regulations as intricate as those governing your public life. "Has Thompson spoken to her about it?" you inquire, maintaining appropriate interest in household harmony without becoming overly involved in servant matters. "Yes, ma'am," quite sternly from what Cook says. The girl was in tears, but Cook thinks she'll settle down with proper guidance. This exchange illustrates your role as ultimate authority over household staff, while emphasizing the layers of management between you and the lower servants. Just as Victorian society operates through carefully defined hierarchies, so too does the domestic sphere that supports your social position. "I trust Thompson's judgment in such matters," you reply, effectively closing the topic. "Is Lady Caroline's evening tea prepared?" "Yes, ma'am. Sarah has taken it up already." As Martha continues helping you undress, removing the corset that shaped your silhouette throughout the day, you experience the physical relief that comes only in these private moments. The literal constraints of Victorian femininity, the corsetry, multiple petticoats, and heavy skirts that define your public appearance are temporarily abandoned in the privacy of your bedroom. This physical unburdening parallels the mental relaxation that comes with privacy, the constant vigilance required in public monitoring every word, gesture, and expression for propriety eases slightly behind closed doors, though never disappears entirely. Even in private, certain standards of behavior remain internalized, invisible but powerful constraints on thought and action. The following morning brings a reminder of another hidden aspect of Victorian life, the management of health and bodily functions. As you sit at your dressing table, Martha appears with a small brown bottle. "Dr. Wilson's tonic, ma'am," she says discreetly. "He recommended a dose each morning this week." The nature of your ailment, mild digestive discomfort, remains unnamed. Like pregnancy, menstruation, and other physical realities, specific health concerns, particularly those affecting delicate bodily functions, exist in the realm of euphemism and implication rather than direct reference. You take the prescribed dose without comment. The Victorian approach to health, especially women's health, combines scientific medicine with moral judgment. Physical ailments are often attributed to moral or emotional causes, nervousness, excessive emotion, or insufficient self-control. Dr. Wilson had implied as much during his visit last week, suggesting your digestive troubles might result from overthinking household matters rather than any physical cause. This conflation of physical symptoms with moral character represents another layer of Victorian private reality, the medicalization of proper feminine behavior. Later that morning, a visit from Mrs. Pemberton introduces yet another hidden dimension of Victorian society, the underground network of female information exchange that operates beneath the surface of polite conversation. "I've come to inquire about Eleanor's wedding," Mrs. Pemberton explains as she settles into your drawing room. Harriet is most curious about the arrangements, given her own approaching nuptials. The formal reason for her visit established, the conversation quickly shifts to more substantial intelligence gathering. "I understand Mr. Crawford's cousin attended," Mrs. Pemberton continues casually. "The one with the somewhat questionable connections in Manchester?" This oblique reference to family scandal likely involving trade, improper marriage, or financial difficulty represents a common form of Victorian information exchange.